Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So you're driving home and something usually happens. You start thinking. And you start arguing with somebody in your mind, a loved one. And it doesn't stop there. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Has this ever happened to anybody? Have you ever argued with somebody in your mind? So, I can tell you, make du'a for that person, and you'll be like, yes, yes, brother, of course, we have to make du'a. And I can also tell you that you're arguing with who? You'll say, well, with myself. Which part of yourself? The qareen? The shaitanic self? Waswasa? Now, what you have to do, of course, is stop those thoughts because they go nowhere. In fact, you even start hearing a voice back and forth. And remember, this is on your way home from school after a long day. Now, for those of the teachers that have kids that you also have to drag them, that probably gets a lot harder and harder. But when you make dua for somebody that you're arguing with, what ends up happening? When you make dua for somebody in their absence, Allah creates an angel, makes dua for you, correct? It's not just that. The shaitan that's whispering to you, as dumb as he is, or she, they end up learning. Every time they whisper that one intrusive thought, you're making dua. Eventually you're going to say, "Ba'din, I'm going to stop reminding them." Now, if we look at this from a psychological perspective or from an Islamic perspective, we get the same outcome. Thought stopping, isti'adha, as a result of that nazgha, right? That initial attack. So, in today's khutbah, in today's talk, it's not about giving you the outline of everything. It's about the first step, which is usually the hardest part. Because at the end of the day, to come in 45 minutes or less, talk to you about self-care, you already know self-care. To talk to you about student achievement, you already know. Instead, today, I want to talk more about you, specifically adapting this to you. Now, we don't have enough time to go one by one and ask you what school you're from, get to know you more, which causes a problem because how am I supposed to adapt this to you if I don't know what you go through on a day-to-day basis? So I tried to select things that we all tend to do. Likewise, in the evidence that I put forth, I won't go into detail on the evidence, by the way. For those of you that are into academia, nerds like myself, we can talk about that some other time. But everything that we do here has a solid evidential foundation. But a lot of the things that we call evidence-based, it needs to be adapted to you. Anybody here a psychologist or a counselor in the schools or anything? Yep, perfect. Okay. So, yes, I have a PhD in social work, and I'm a psychologist. So I have a master's in psychology. Here in Alberta, that's all we need. Those of you coming from Ontario, should we start that? No? Don't go there? Okay. But the idea is this. The field of psychology needs help. Where's it going to come from? Medicine? No offense. Engineering? Or Islam? The first question that they usually teach in the classes is what? With the skills. Isn't it this question? Is that the first question you ask somebody? Now, who here speaks a second language? Show of hands. Okay, I want you, word for word, Google Translate style. How do you say what brings you in today in your language? Say it. Say it out loud. Translated, not interpreted, huh? What brings you in today? So in Arabi, in Palestinian Arabi, شو جابك اليوم? Right? Now, if I said that to your dad the first time he comes into my clinic, would he not grab the chair and fling it at my head? Does it not sound offensive? So imagine the most basic of skills, the first thing that students are taught. When it's translated, it's offensive to us. What else is offensive to us? And more importantly, what else needs to be modified? And that's why we have this session today. It's not about self-care per se. It's about soul care. It's not to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. It's to talk about post-traumatic soul disorder. It's not to talk about a high-achieving school full of healthy minds and healthy bodies. It's about a God-centered school with worship-centered practices. And these are the broad goals. But at the end of the day, one of the most important techniques that I teach my students, so I train a lot of future psychologists, including 2 imams who have, is there any imams in the room? Okay, just between you and I, in 10 years from now, I guarantee you there'll be a spike in imams transitioning to mental health field. Guaranteed. So if you have a good imam at your school, keep him, or else we're coming after him. You can make a lot more money, it's a lot more enjoyable, and they don't have to deal with all the day-to-day stresses. And that's what this session also is about keeping you healthy, keeping you happy. You wouldn't be here if you didn't love the school so much. You wouldn't be here if your motivation to stay at your school was external, was financial. Everybody knows you don't get paid what you're worth. Everybody knows in the Muslim community, gratitude is one of the things that's least done, despite it being one of the most important Islamic principles. But it's not done intentionally. It just somehow became normal. And that's why sometimes, in order to fix a problem, instead of giving you all this theoretical advice, which usually doesn't work, instead, let's just walk through your day. And so when I train my students, they all start the same way. Any new teachers in the room? Like first year, second year, third year? Yeah? You know that feeling? It's called imposter syndrome. Am I doing the right job? It doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. It means you care about what you do. And that's why you get that feeling. And by the way, 99.9% of the people in this room experience it as well. The one person that doesn't is usually a narcissist. So here's the thing. Walking through your day, your drive to school, when you wake up, your morning routine. If you rush out of the house, do you really think you're going to be comfortable when you get to school? But if we were to choose one instance of this and dissect it, you'd get that deep learning that you're looking for. Who here came for surface level learning? Good. Nobody came for the basics. The basics, just go ChatGPT it. Go online, you'll get it. You want to walk away with something that you can build on yourself. And that's why I want to make sure that you all understand. Oh, by the way, sorry, let me tell you something about these slides really quickly. As much as I tell you don't look at the slides, you're going to have to, okay? And this is intentional. Why? Because I want to spark something. I want you to say, what was that again? So I'm going to zoom through the slide when I notice too much. You don't have to read the slide. I will share a whole write-up and paper on this with you, right? Bye, Rami. I love doing that. But everything that I'm going to talk about, there's أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. The date palm tree. That's what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ compared us to. Strong roots. And what's the trunk? The trunk is where we're at here. It's the day-to-day activities. It's the constant back and forth. Takes from the roots to give to the branches, leaves and the fruits. And inshallah, those fruits are also seed-bearing. And that's what you do every single day. You build foundations in people on a daily basis. People come to me, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month sometimes. They're not getting anything in 1 hour, especially not a 15-year-old problem. They're getting something very basic so that they can do it on their own when they leave. And that's what I'm hoping for here. And so if there's something intriguing, something intrigues you, I would recommend write it down if you think it's an important question. And the more you're able to frame it in a question, the clearer it becomes. And then this acronym, Iqra, it's a pedagogy for kids, but it's also for adult learning as well. And the whole idea is it's important to reflect on things just as much as it's important to read and to remind. So any acronym I put forth is usually versatile. It's not supposed to be rigid. So R does not always stand for reading. It's supposed to stand for wherever you want, because we're not bound by the acronym, but we're bound by the concept itself, the essence of it. And you've all heard it time and time again. The first word revealed in Islam is Iqra. Okay, what was the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the 6,000th, and the 150,000th? We don't want the surface stuff, we want to go deeper. So what I'm going to present to you are evidence-based practices, but they're culturally adapted and localized. And what do I mean by localized? I mean that the essence of it relates to you. At its core, it relates to you. But what evidence-based practice is we take from the generalities of the research and we tailor it to the individual. So I have this convert approach. It's kind of like, I just finished writing a book called Islamically Modified CBT. And so there, what I did is I maintained the fidelity, the foundations of cognitive behavioral therapy, all that stuff. And then when the modifications came, those modifications need to be both Islamically compliant and compliant with the essential theories of CBT. Okay. Am I getting too academic here? Should I tone it down a bit? No, we're good? Perfect. And the reason is why? Because we're always going to go into the dragon's den. We don't want to go back into the lizard's hole. And so we have to compete with other scholars in these areas. So unless we're going to make sure that our models have that sense of fidelity while also being adaptable, then it's best to just stick to what you know. To start creating new ways of doing things without any of the research, without showing our evidence, is like me coming to your classroom, never having taught a day in my life, and telling you exactly what you need to do in your class. I mean, who gets annoyed by that? Right? Like, okay, you want to tell me how to teach my class? You step in, any principals in the room? Good. The principal comes in and all of a sudden, no, sister, you need to be doing it this way. No, you need to be doing it that way. No, you have to do it that way. Okay, thank you. You don't see all the work that's gone in? 17 days of preparing for this one class, and all of a sudden, now, and then you go, oh, no, actually, sorry. I don't, that, you know that, those feelings that you hold inside of you about whatever school or organization you work in. Do you ever talk to anybody about it? Or is it just you? Do you ever express yourself anywhere, or is it just on your way home arguing in your mind? You want to be healthy? Talk about it. Do you have to talk to a therapist? No. But if you want to see the evidence for the best possible things to do for student achievement, it's right here. Those of you that are familiar with visible learning, the Hattie studies and all that, these are the number one things that need to happen. And that's teachers working together, evaluating their own impact. Why? Because أهل مكة أدرى بشعابها. Because you know your classrooms better than anybody else. You know those students sometimes better than anybody else. You know yourself better than anybody else. And that's why localization is so important. See, culturally adapting a module for the whole class is one thing. But to start using things that are so relevant to your student or to you, you'll never forget it. But if you look at these, can you immediately see some Islamic principles pop up? Like, I mean, quick. Who sees tawbah in there? Who sees shukr? Who sees ta'aruf? I'm sorry, if you don't know what those words mean, that's one of the problems with this convert approach, is it does require dynamic bilingualism. It requires a deep understanding of the Islamic side of things and a shallow understanding of the psychology side of things, okay? Whereas others have it the other way around. Oh, you just have to have a basic understanding of Islam and a deep understanding of psychology. What about getting the proportions right? What would that be in Islam? Or this Goldilocks principle. Now, most of you who weren't born and raised in Canada, you might not even know who Goldilocks is, but she's a white girl. Oh, sorry, is this not a social justice conference? Remember, I have a PhD in social work, so it's my duty to challenge status quo. But yeah, of course. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. The whole idea is wasatiyya, the just right approach. How do you know something is just right if you don't know the person in front of you? One of the things that tends to be forgotten is this one here. Where did it go? Where is it? Yeah, here we go. Explicit success criteria. Now, those with an engineering and linear mathematical background will tell you SMART goals, specific, measurable, agreed upon or achievable, realistic, timely goals are the best goals to have. Yeah, of course they are. No doubt. But it's a little more than that. If we go deeper and we look at the tri-council agencies, these are the agencies that fund all of the university research in Canada. SSHRC, NSERC, Health. Anybody familiar with those? Because it's there that your curriculums get transformed, by the way. Where do you think EDI why does EDI have to be enforced? Because if they're not, at the university level, they don't get funding. And good. Because equity, diversity, and inclusion is not supposed to exclude you. We're already marginalized groups within a marginalized community. And this is why Islamic schools are so important for social justice, because they remind everybody that, listen, whatever we do has to be localized. It has to meet the needs of the students, not the needs of some outside stakeholders. As a psychologist, my client, or I call them my guests because I have a hospitality model, they come first. Always, always, always. But don't you have to protect society? Yes, after. So who comes first in your classroom? Do they? Shouldn't it be you? Of course. Because you have that inside of you. You have that ithar. And sometimes you, mashallah, you're like a candle. Light up the world, but you burn yourself out in the process. What about fiqh al-ata? Anybody familiar with fiqh al-ata? When giving, from an Islamic perspective, who should you give first? أمك وأباك أختك وأخاك ثم أدناك أدناك, right? In fiqh al-ata, yourself first. Why? Because if you get stressed, depressed, repressed, oppressed, whatever, it's going to pass on to the students. Ever had a bad day and you realized, oh man, my teaching was terrible? Anybody give khutbahs here? Giving khutbahs now? Yeah. MashaAllah. Sorry, now. Oh, beta. MashaAllah. Ever hear a khutbah and you felt the imam's rage and depression and stress? We like to complain about teachers and parents and imams and communities, but at the end of the day, where's our compassion for them, right? Have mercy on them so Allah can have mercy on you. But going back to this curriculum building, it's not as easy as we'd like to think. But a module in your class can easily be Islamically modified. Why do I mention this in particular with you here? Because I guarantee you, one of the stressors that nobody will ever see, and it's so hard for you to talk about, is we're in an Islamic school, but it doesn't feel like it. I'm teaching at an Islamic school, but the curriculum has nothing to do with Islam. Or at least we don't think it does. And so we start feeling like, okay, well, I need something. What resources do you go to? And at the end of the day, it causes a sense of moral distress. Like, I want to do better. And then that imposter syndrome comes in. But then you carry that continuously. So what's the first step to addressing that? I mean, mind you, my oldest son, he's homeschooled, okay? But I created the curriculum for him. And I call it the Integrated Islamic Identity Development Plan, or the 3D plan. Get it? I-D, Roman numeral 3D. Anyways, 3D plan, okay? And now this is for him. The Alif, Ba, Ta, Ain, Sin. That's his curriculum. But it goes a lot deeper than just teaching about Aqidah and Akhlaq and A'mal al-Qulub. And I know some of you are like, hold on a second. Aqidah is not spelled with an A. It is in dynamic bilingualism. And who cares? Those conventions aren't always helpful. Just as what brings you in today isn't always the best way to start. Things need to change. But to do this is like developing a treatment plan for my child, who I know very well, who I'm committed to that curriculum, but I don't teach him a single thing. I'm not sitting there walking him through things. If I didn't spend the last 25 years doing da'wah and youth work and youth centers, right? That's why I'm looking at them and like, oh, mashallah. Because I remember them when they were like this. Do you remember that? Of course not. No, I was never a baby. I always was great, mashallah. So you don't think I can ask Faisal to mentor Jameel, my son? Would he say no? Can he say no? Should he say no? Will I let him say no? Those of you, you've taught so many students, yet your own children, you get stressed out when you're like, oh, I wish I had more time for them. And that's why mobilizing each other, working together, ta'awun, not tanafus, is such an important thing. Now, forget about this right now, the bigger picture. Oh, we're going backwards, come on. It just so happens though, Ain Sin, we're from a village called Ain Sinya. Okay? Which means what? When we're doing social studies, he's learning about Palestine as well. And it just all fits, okay? Now, that's me. I love going deep. I hate the surface level stuff. In fact, this is a picture. You guys know who those are? You don't know who that is?
I know it's your son, but who's in the back?
Muhammad Wasim and... Oh, yeah, exactly. This guy on the right is becoming a psychiatrist in Pakistan right now. Both of them are MMA champions or whatever it is. They like to fight. And this shirt is my favorite shirt. I bought it for Jameel because I thought, yes. Okay? This also frustrates when it comes to building Islamic interventions, Islamic modules, and then all of a sudden somebody comes and just suggests, and this is a little blunt and I apologize for it, but yeah, let's do it the dumbest way possible because it's easier for you. Okay. This is one of my biggest triggers, especially when it comes to Islamic psychology. So where was the brother that said he wanted to collaborate on coaching? Be careful when you talk to me. I will be very firm. And the reason is because our deen has way more to offer. Wallahi, it does. Now, who here looks at this and says, brother, astaghfirullah, this is gambling? Who thinks that? Right off the bat, top of your head, who thought that? Now, if you put this in your classroom, what would happen? If you talked about the light spectrum and sent out a paper to parents with the light spectrum, red, blue, green, all the way, the colors of the rainbow, would you not get a complaint? Why? Why? If I put a 6-point star up here, is that all of a sudden representative of Israel? Why? They get to own those things? Why do we get so offended by these things? We don't think about it. It's an instant reaction. It's not a response. There's no thought that goes into it. Why do I use this in particular? Because I understand how gambling works and how powerful it is when the schedule of reinforcement is so variable. When we reward students, we think that if we give them awards, competitions, that it's helping. But I don't believe it is. Because if you truly want a God-centered school, then the Islamic motivation, we need to harness the intrinsic motivation, not the extrinsic. And if we analyze the way we deal with our kids, we'll start to see that. This competition rather than collaboration. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. What I am saying is that sometimes when we do things unintentionally, without deep thinking about it, without looking at the foundation of it. So for example, let's say at this conference, I hope it's not happening, but let's say at this conference, we were going to award the Teacher of the Year in Canada award. And it wasn't you. How would you feel? Well, Brother Mahdi, I am a believer. I have to love for others what I love for myself. True. But it wouldn't make you feel neglected? When we reward outcomes and not process, you all know this. We give report cards. I never looked at my kids' grades. I don't, because I don't care. But that's just me. I always look at the teacher's comments about their akhlaq. Because if the kid has bad akhlaq, then what does the knowledge really matter at the end of the day? And no offense, this is not to undermine the education system, a'udhu billah. But at least here in Alberta, we don't have the best curriculum. And that's not me saying that, that's the people that revise the curriculum. So if you're going to integrate Islam into the session, and why? Why would you integrate Islam in the session? Because you love doing it so much. Not because it's going to lead to outcomes, it's going to facilitate the process. You're going to enjoy teaching the class a lot more, which of course you already do. I get it. None of you have any stress from school, alhamdulillah, right? But the idea is sometimes just taking one concept, and you can go and you can talk to Dr. Jasser Oda, take his Maqasid methodology class, talk to the Imam, taking just one concept. For Jamil, for example, with Ayn Seen, it was all about what he sees in front of him. That was the curriculum for the first year. What the hell do I know about curriculum building and learning objectives and subject introductions and these guiding questions for the curriculum and identifying the core competencies that are needed? I don't know anything about that. I had to learn it all. But I said, you know what? Your curriculum is everything you see in front of you. So that started to grow to the point where he started learning about moon sighting and this and this and this and that and so forth and so on. But where I'm coming with this is, as you start to build out a concept and think about it deeper, so many other things emerge. Like, how do we lead to husn al-dhann? When I see something, what happens in the brain? وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ? It's all inside of us. These miracles that we're supposed to explore and analyze and go a little deeper. And husn al-dhann has a lot to do with first impressions. First time you meet a student, what do you think? First few minutes of the day, What's happening in your life? As soon as you leave the house, are you excited to go to school? Or, okay, Allahumma sabbirni ya Rabb, right? That's the usual colloquial way. Again, please, this is not to blame or attack or anything. This is just to talk at a human level. And at the end of the day, what is your evidence? Imagine we lived in a world where everything we thought, felt, or acted upon was evidence-based. There was actual evidence to it. How much of our arguments with others is based on assumptions? Well, they're not smiling at me. I must be doing a terrible presentation, right? Okay, let me crack a few jokes. Now I'm starting to get nervous. Have you ever taught a student that was loving your class, you just never knew it? Ever have somebody praise you and you had no clue they even knew you existed? My students, I have a problem with my meta-perception, okay? I don't know how other people see me. I honestly, truly don't. And so when one of my assistants is doing something and I'm standing behind her and she's fumbling with her own name, I'm like, you spelled your name wrong. And she's like, well, you make me nervous. Well, why would I make you nervous? I thought I was a supportive person. I thought I was this. Khalas, it's perception. And so students, do they not get nervous when you're around? But the idea here is experiential evidence sometimes is the most powerful evidence. You as teachers have experiences that nobody in this world knows, do they? And so yes, I would encourage you to publish. Publish anywhere. Let us learn from your experiences. And that's why these kind of conferences are so amazing. Because you notice the conference theme, the purpose behind the conference. Inclusivity. People that don't get a chance to speak out sometimes at a school, this organization wants to make sure they're included, right? Excellence, ihsan. They want it to be God-centered. How do you have a God-centered school when God is the last part of the equation? So we start with the curriculum, then we add God. Isn't it haram to say, you and Allah? Aren't you supposed to say Allah, thumma ant? Allah, then you? But what do we usually start with? And what do we usually start our day with? Now, I can tell you, you have to start the day being God-centered yourself. But come on, how hard is that when you have 4 minutes to leave the house? Knowing full well that your parking stall might have been already taken by a parent. Knowing that it's Jum'ah, and you're thinking, oh, I wish I can go back to the university days where Jum'ah was the best day of the week. I knew I was going to listen to, a loud but entertaining khutbah. And now I've become like a guard at prison, patrolling the lines during Jum'ah. During Salah time, what is your role? Because all of these are the moments in the day where the school hopes that you're taking advantage of it. But yet still, it's not God-centered. The students are not sitting down, not just because they're bored and it's a hard wood floor. And I say this often in the khutbah. Most of you are women, so you might not understand this concept. But for the men, if the imam goes 5 minutes over in anywhere, whether it's Ontario, whether it's Saskatchewan, whether it's Alberta, what happens? Is there not a commotion? Does he not get 5 minutes only, 5 minutes. And yet we expect students, children, to sit well-behaved during Salah time. And then they grow up feeling like Salah is what? When you grew up, what was your experience with Salah? externally rewarded or intrinsically motivated. Now, when it comes to evidence, unfortunately, we usually focus more on what we call science, right? But science is about probabilities. Nobody will ever tell you. Social sciences especially has given up on the concept of certainty. It's always going to be probabilistic, but not the Quran. لا ريب فيه. No doubt. And so قوانين al-Quran, when they are central, the قانون al-Quran, I mean the Quranic theory, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, right? Those who do righteous deeds, لَنَحْيِيَنَّهُمْ حَيَاةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ. So the theory is there. The roots are there. What is the practices? What is the day-to-day practices to achieve it? Okay? So, because, of course, I have to offer something, right? Those of you who are familiar with the professional quality of life assessment, you've probably already, I guaranteed you've had at least one seminar or something. Somebody presented it. No? Well, here it is, okay? The whole idea is this is where burnout, compassion, fatigue, all of these things come in. Now, you don't work in the counseling area, but you do a lot more than counseling in the class. So when a child has a severe trauma, it might affect you, okay? When it comes to all this though, it's this one right here. And by the way, how would you modify this yourself? Or, usually in self-care workshops and seminars, they'll talk about the healthy mind platter, right? And you know what, does anybody have a plate here? Any plates? Let's assume this is a plate, okay? Yeah, there you go. Can you lift that up? There you go. How much fits in that plate? Definitely not enough for you during the day when you have to take care of 23 kids. Now, my son Jamil is one child, 23 teachers. That's a luxury, for sure. But do you have time? Because you want to know how to do self-care? Okay, have more time in the day. But time, energy, and assets, these are always limited. And so giving you these one and done tips, of course they're important. All of it is important. But how is it practical? And not just that. What do you think happens to this during Ramadan? Aren't you also fasting during Ramadan? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Isn't Ramadan about restraint? And you have to double it up, because not only do you have to restrain yourself and the waswasa that's going on the drive home, but also in the class. So administrators, maybe this Ramadan it's time to shift some things up again. Maybe don't take them to a hockey game, and maybe add that extra time for the teachers. To just add an extra 5 minutes on their way to Jummah, so that the teachers can have their own Jummah. And I believe in most Islamic schools, teachers get their own Jummah or no? Yes, no, yes, no? Yes. طبعا احنا أحسن منكم ما شاء الله. Good. Teachers should, right? Good. So you also get the opportunity to complain about a long khutbah too. Good. Everybody needs to, just joking. But anywho, the idea is the things that are applied generally to dominant populations sometimes don't apply to us. That's why this is really good, but it needs to be modified. And after all, sister, can you lift up the plate again? In any of our cultures, if you went to somebody's house and they gave you that plate, if it wasn't dessert, you'd be like, Rajja, right? طيب. There's so much more as well. So these are techniques I train my students in, because something can always be better, right? There's always something that can be better. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. If you want to know the essential evidence behind any psychotherapeutic intervention, well, everything psychological is biological. And that's why وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. The neurotransmitters in the brain. Why do SSRIs work? Why do these medications work? At what level do they operate? So if you can activate in somebody something that leads to some of these chemicals, then whatever you're doing is going to also be evidence-based. Can salah reduce stress? But does it reduce stress? Depends, right? For some it does. For those that do it out of wantivation, they can't wait to pray. قُرَّةَ عَيْنِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ, right? The way the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prayed. And for the majority, we pray because we have to pray. We have to pray either way. You're going to pray either way. You might as well start with that. Sometimes a small shift. Oh my God, it's almost Asr. Right now, especially with the hour change, let me guess. You've missed a prayer, didn't you? How did you feel? How do you feel if you miss a prayer at an Islamic school? When there's a musalla right there? Now I could talk about it from a biological perspective, but why? That's too simplistic. It does something to you at a moral level. And things can go wrong. We can't just say, if you smell lavender, you'll feel relaxed. What if you're a refugee, lived in Turkey for a while, and you were forced to work in one of the hammams, and you hated it? It's all lavender. Would that not trigger some negative emotions? Or who here loves the sound of a waterfall? My grandmother doesn't, because she'd think, Allah yarhamha, she'd think that, min اللي بيكب المي? She'd think, where's the water leak happening? That's what happens when you grow up in poverty. So it has to be adapted, okay? I'm just saying, one and done, quick fixes, things that apply to everybody, it doesn't work. So when we go at the biological basis of behavior, that's وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. There's something amazing there. You want to be healthy. Well, what are the essentials of physical health? You're looking at your clock. Am I running out of time?
Huh?
Come on, Mumita. Am I running out of time? I'm done?
Like 5 minutes.
Oh, like 5 minutes. Inshallah khair. Well, that's what I get for putting too much. The basics of physical health, you know. The basics of psychological health, a sense of competence, a sense of choice, and a sense of connectedness. So if you feel disconnected to people around you, you feel forced to do things, and you don't feel like you're doing a good job, the basics of psychological health will be thwarted. By the way, this is 70% of my PhD research on volunteer leaders in the Muslim community, which is you. I spent like 7 years analyzing it. And that's why I think it's so terrible when we use Islamic interventions in a toxically positive way. You know what I mean by that?
No.
Don't tell people who are going through a rough time, life is a test. Don't do it. You're just protecting yourself when you say that. You don't know what to say. Continue the ayat. Why is life a test? Jannah. Right? And since I have 5 minutes, I'm not going to go through a lot of this stuff. I'm just going to remind you that there are models, there are deeper ways of us doing these things. And when it comes to relationships, if you have a problem with anybody, what is the most important thing to do? Who says forgive them? No, you don't want to forgive them? Forgive, khalas. What about your rights? أفشوا السلام بينكم. 3 days you have to be upset with somebody, right? That's the Islamic principle. You will not enter Jannah until you believe. You will not believe until you love one another. Shall I not tell you how? The Rasul ﷺ said, أفشوا السلام بينكم. Spread peace. All of us know that there's those 2 people in the community that are fighting, splitting up the community. When was the last time they said Salamu Alaikum to each other? Just that. So before we talk about conflict resolution processes, interpersonal therapies, all the communication building and assertiveness training and all that stuff, let's start with that principle. Can these 2 people meet and greet for the sake of Allah alone? Because if that happens, what is the outcome of meeting somebody for the sake of Allah alone? Is it Jannah? Yes. Is it Iman? Yes. Is it under the Arsh on the Day of Judgment, the shadow? Yes. So meeting and greeting people for the sake of Allah. If you can do that, then a lot of the other factors will likely be a lot easier. Or I'll just tell you, stop complaining, life is a test, and you'll get your report card eventually. A God-centered school should have worship-centered practices. Or said a different way, does your God-centered school lead to worship-centered practices? What do I mean by worship-centered practices? Number 1, meeting and greeting others for the sake of Allah. Wouldn't that be worship-centered? Advice, saying the right things. Don't give advice. If you want to do counseling, respond to the right things. This is what advice looks like. You should increase your iman, of course. You should have more sabr, have more tawakkul, make more du'a, make more dhikr. Right? So those of you, who does curriculum building? Anyone? What would these be called on the left in school? Outcomes, right? Okay, so now let's talk about the process. God-centered school is an outcome, or it's the roots. How is it seen? It's seen during the salah time, at least. Observe your fellow teachers, the students, during the salah time. Do they do it because they want to do it, or because they have to do it? We start off doing things because we have to, no problem. And we use principles of learning and schedules of reinforcement and rewards and punishments, of course. But over time, if people feel competent, choice, and connectedness, that external motivation turns to internal motivation. I had one person, her du'a was passive aggressive, meaning her du'a was causing her more anxiety. And so I told her, stop making that du'a. Instead, engage in dhikr, quoting this hadith Qudsi. Now, if I came up to you and I said, well, today we're going to diagnose shaitan and I'm going to encourage you not to make du'a. Those are those sound bites, right? It's all context. Well, you want to diagnose shaitan? There you go. Diagnose him. But what does he want? For us not to be grateful. And what is the psycho-spiritual first aid response for when you make a mistake? Well, let's look at Adam. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. But how many times do we make a mistake and then we try to hide it? How many times do we have a problem with somebody and we keep avoiding them? The first step to relationship problems, contact. أفشوا السلام بينكم. The first step to when we feel like we've made a mistake is to ask for forgiveness. And of course, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا. You want a theory, a foundation for all this? Here's a few verses. When I trained the Jam'iyya al-Falastiniya, We develop a localized framework. But the whole focus is on that initial interaction. The boundaries set. Otherwise, you have a refugee and you ask them, what do you want? What do you need? What are they going to tell you? I need a house and I need a job. And there's no process. And the person has this tamanni. So when we take our kids to the Islamic school, our expectations are unrealistic. We want you to raise them. We want you in loco parentis. We want you to do this, do that, correct? Sometimes the most important thing for you as a teacher to do is give to yourself. Protect yourself from the unnecessary stresses. And that's why, inshallah, each of you has mentors and people you're connected to help out with it. But all right, nope. The reason why you do it all. This is where we're at, and I'm wrapping up, inshallah. You do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there comes a time when you forget that. And usually, that's an indicator that you're stressed out and overwhelmed. Can you integrate throughout your day moments where you can reflect? Remember in university, they used to always say, renew your intentions once before, 100 times during, and once after. Can you do it 100 times during, really? How many of you right now are thinking about checking out and so many other things? How many times when you talk to somebody, you're always thinking about the next thing you're going to say? We can't be in the moment. It's very tough sometimes. How many times do we focus on trying to problem solve the past? And the Rasul ﷺ says, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالظَّنِّ فَإِنَّهُ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيث. And we have all these assumptions. Sometimes we're never in the moment. Yet I guarantee you, every one of you has heard of the word mindfulness and how important that is. So can you be mindful 5 minutes before the salah? Actually enjoy doing it? Or does it have to get done quick? Why? Because, well, we have a certain amount of hours we have to provide. By the way, everybody knows, at least in Alberta, 950 hours of in-class instruction. That's what it takes, right? Grade 1 to 9, I think. Then it goes to 900. There's a lot of time in the school year to add to the salah. Way more than enough time. So that's not a problem. But at the end of the day, is it something we truly want? Do we want to help others for the sake of Allah? Do we want to provide that ilmun yantafa'u bih, that knowledge that benefits? Because if that's what you truly want and you're not doing it, that's going to affect your sense of competence. That's going to bring you down. If you truly want to do it and nobody will let you do it, that's going to affect your sense of choice, your sense of autonomy, and that's going to bring your psychological well-being down. And if you got nobody to do it with, you're the only one, that's going to bring your sense of connectedness down. And that's going to stress you out as well. Or at the very least, reduce your internal motivation. This conference, bringing people together. Imagine these organizations were to afshu salama baynakum. When was the last time a Taqwa Academy intersected with Edmonton Islamic Academy? When was the Gibraltar Leadership Academy and the Sufa Academy? Any communication there? Imagine, Islamic schools don't even communicate. And that's why the Islamic School Association of Canada is so important. Bringing people together for the sake of Allah, so that the schools can be God-centered. And alhamdulillah, with people like Dr. Shamiza, Asad, and the people that organize it, they are God-centered people. لا نزكي على الله أحد, but hey, if you get praised, anybody remember hearing in university or whatever, if somebody praises you, do what? Come on, throw dirt in their face, right? Anybody ever heard that hadith before? Out of context, right? So if I say thank you, should you throw dirt in my face? If I say, MashaAllah, this is amazing, you've done a great job, throw dirt in my face? Because there's another hadith that says, a man comes to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and says, Ya Rasulullah, there's a man who does good and people praise him for it. What do you say about that? And he said, this is an early glad tiding for the believer. So if you think you're protecting your fellow colleagues by not thanking them for the good job they did, because you don't want the shaitan to attack their nafs, if you don't thank them, shaitan will attack their nafs. Every one of us needs to feel a sense of competence, that we did a good job, that we do things that we want to do. Motivation and wantivation are very important concepts here. And that we do it with people that we love. But I understand. We don't want to be cliche, okay? We don't want to prescribe the outcome. It takes work and effort. So, if all you ever do for the rest of your life is follow these 5 ahadith, you will be operating, in my mind, from akhlaq bidun nifaq. Speak good or stay silent. For others what you love for yourself. تَرْكَهُ مَا لَا يَعْنِيهِ. Trust me, when the kids are talking about video games during recess, it's none of your business. Just keep walking. Who cares? What they say in their own spaces, I would never want to sit and listen to my son playing video games with his friends. Of course he's going to say something inappropriate. And then I have to do something about it. Khalas, I trust him in his space. But the idea here is, it's the lying. It's the contract breaking. It's the trust breaking. It's the wicked arguing and quarreling that kills us, destroys a school environment. And it's right there. You want a code of ethics for any Islamic organization, that's all you need. Now, don't get angry is not about stop, don't get angry, that's it. As I hope I've shown, there's so much more that goes underneath it. Let me end with this though. Is it okay? 2 minutes? No?
Yeah, it's ended.
It did, didn't it? Sorry. Oh, I'm going backwards. Yeah, let's start again. Okay. Bismillah. So today I want to tell you, have more sabr. Make more dua. Have more iman. Let me just end with this. And this one is really, really important to me because the people I tend to work with do come demoralized. And we know this sense of brokenness. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to Jabir, radiyallahu anhu. Does anybody know who Jabir ibn Abdullah is? Show of hands. By the way, if you don't, you're not alone. Most people don't. Yet he narrated over 1,500 hadith. He was maybe 15, 16 years old, and his father died in the Battle of Uhud. And he loved his father, and his father loved him. Let's fast forward to the moment where the Rasul ﷺ sees Jabir in this distraught state, and he says, Ya Jabir, ma li araka munkasiran. Why do I see you so broken? It just so happens that the opposite of inkisar is what? Jabr. It's just like right there, in the name. And what did the Rasul ﷺ do? Why do I see you so broken? And he says, Ya Rasulullah, my father died and he left me with debt and to take care of my sisters. The Rasul ﷺ's response would be what? Normally, what we do is we focus on the material side and we throw money at problems. But that's not the sunnah here. Jabir was deeply bereaving, he was grieving, he was hurt, he was in pain. Adding more money is not going to change anything. Creating more parking space is not going to fix it. Having more buildings is not going to help. He said, أَفَلَا أُبَشِّرُكَ بِمَا لَقِيَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَبَاكَ. Shall I not tell you how your father met Allah? ما كلم الله أحدا قط إلا من وراء حجاب وأحيا أباك فكلمه كفاحا. He says to Jabir, in the worst day of Jabir's life, he says, shall I not tell you how your father met Allah? He said, nobody met Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or speaks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except from behind a veil. But Allah raised your father and spoke to him kifahan. If you don't know this story, I encourage you to listen to it. If you don't know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and post-traumatic growth, I encourage you to listen to it. If you, for any reason, feel like your iman is reducing, maybe it has something to do with your psychological well-being, not the other way around. And if we protect that, if we ensure that we are living God-centered lives, and we know how to do it, then our schools become God-centered. And if we have God-centered schools, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see worship-centered practices. Jazakumullah khair, and please forgive me for going over time. Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum.